Hello, everybody. Welcome to the JupyterLab weekly meeting. It's going to be probably a short one, thanks to Thanksgiving. And let's not start with me, but with Jeremy. And if in the meantime you have additional points you want to bring, don't hesitate to write them on the agenda.
Okay, so the first item is new follow-up release. So it's 31. Check it out. There is also a new, going to add it to the agenda, a new Notebook 7 pre-release as well, based off this one from Lab. And the other point I wanted to bring was something that that came up during this pull request that added the deprecation warnings to the JupyterLab lab extension install, update, and uninstall commands. And Nick raised the question of whether we should consider moving some of the Node.js commands to a different package. There will be a sidecar package, and there will be a hard dependency on that package for JupyterLab 4, and then move it to an optional package for JupyterLab 5, just to give enough time for people to do the switch. Yeah, that's it. So it's in this issue that is linked there. We can discuss it here or also on the issue. Either is fine. And that's fine. That's it for me.
Thanks, Jeremy. And if nobody has additional comments, then I can do my points. So normally there should be the performance meeting after this one, but because it's not the best week for people in the US, we will not making that meeting. Sorry for the late notice. Then some question. So the announcement PR has been backported to 3.6.0 to be released in some future. And it's reading news from us in a specific repository that's under a JupyterLab organization. And to create a new news, we need actually to publish a new blog post. It's a GitHub pages, that repository. And the question is, what protection, like what rules do we want to add to that repository for being sure that we don't publish or that somebody publish something that we don't want. So for now, I added everybody that's a member of the JupyterLab Council as maintainers to that project. It's probably good. There are some people that may have additional rights, of course, because they have rights on the organization level. And for now, any PR needs to be approved by 2 people to get merged. And this is not possible to bypass the rules, or except, of course, if you are a big admin and then you remove the rules, merge it, and then put it back. And the other thing I have done is that only one blog post is published on the news feed, so only one pop-up will be at maximum, at most, like one pop-up will be shown in the interface of the user. And Vidar, go ahead if you have some question.
So I see the posts are Markdown. Markdown can sometimes have HTML things in it. If we show these as rendered Markdown to people, then we're not just having a reputational damage risk, right? In case somebody malicious posts something nefarious in it, they could potentially also be a security risk, right? So there might be also an important question about locking down the sanitation and kind of protecting against injections. Are we putting them in iframes, for example?
No.
Should we?
No. So maybe I can give additional information on the implementation side. Let me share the screen. This is this one. I hope you can see my screen. So a blog post example is here. And actually what will be displayed in the UI is not the blog post itself. So this part won't be seen in JupyterLab UI. The only thing that will be used is the title and the excerpt to have a notification that's not too big. But
right.
still,
so if we're using text content, then, or are we?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I don't think there is something that's forcing. Like, I don't think there is anything forbidding to add a link, like in the short summary, for example. But maybe we can add some CI rules to say.
No. So, but if we in JupyterLab, if you're using like text content.
No, because the notification supports Markdown. So if you have a link, then it will be a link. Because it's a nice feature actually to have, so for notifications.
Yeah, but it's also a scary thing if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
taking untrusted input from somewhere else. It's a big, vector for injection attacks.
It's one thing I was thinking about the other day is that maybe we should implement something as like VS Code, for example, has done that. Anytime you click on a link, it's first captured and is asking you, do you trust that?
Yeah, but so is it with this pop-ups? Is there any way to have the pop-up kind of render in an iframe or somehow sandbox it?
Yeah, we could. I mean, I don't see why not.
Well, it would just be a technical problem of making it happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just changing the DOM to be in an iframe.
Can I suggest a few things? I think this is an awesome way to reach out to our users. JupyterLab is the front door to not just the Jupyter ecosystem, but like the entire scientific ecosystem for millions of people. So certainly, like we're discussing here, I think there should be a high bar and what content gets published and making sure we're not annoying people, but giving people useful information, obviously giving them ways to turn it off if they want to, or resubscribe, etc. With communication channels this broad, I would suggest we do two things before turning it live. One is going to the new executive council that'll be presumably taken into formed in 2 weeks, which is be sort of the stamp of authority from Jupyter, and I would say I would encourage us to go to the security team. And I mean, Vidar is bringing up some excellent security audit type questions. And the security team might have some good insights to weigh in here.
Yeah, I definitely think this is the kind of things, the more eyes on it, the better, right? Just because there will be
for sure
expertise.
Yeah.
Is there some place that the sort of end-to-end system, if we were going to like the security council or the executive council, and they haven't seen any of the background that we've seen in these meetings in previous meetings, is there a short summary of what we're trying to do here, kind of the impact that this work will have with the process that we're proposing, sort of a design doc of some kind that we can put in front of a few people?
I could update the issue maybe to describe what is finally implemented and the goal, like revisit that document.
Or even, I mean, this repo that we have, the JupyterLab static assets repo, that would be an excellent place for sort of long-lived documentation that's a live documentation, not just an issue that gets closed later. And maybe that's a good place for us to gather around and vet the process and vet the mechanism that content is delivered, etc. This is one of the things I'm most excited about in the near future for JupyterLab. We've long struggled to reach our users in any significant way, and this is opening up that door. So I'm really excited to see this going. But we have to be really careful with it, I think, because
if you get it wrong, it's a good opportunity for backlash, right?
And I think it'll be helpful to have this also. Like, we don't have a published process for posting Twitter tweets or Medium blog posts. It's sort of, if you know, then, or if you know somebody, then they'll tell you how to do it, etc. And this is setting a good precedent for us publicly documenting what our communication channels are and how they're run, which I think is really healthy for the community.
So did we not? We do have a blog post, right?
We have a Medium blog,
right,
that sort of posts official things from Jupyter and is sort of officially gated in for some notion of official. And same with the Twitter account. We have an official Twitter account that posts official things from Twitter for some definition of official. But the processes around publishing things to these venues is not well understood, I would say, and certainly not well documented, at least not publicly documented. And so this is a chance for us to do a lot better. And it's a great opportunity for us to extend our reach.
Yeah, it also integrates well with the tooling that most people are already forced to use.
Yes. And maybe it's the answer for some people that have been talking here and there about, is Jupyter stay on Twitter? Well, this is our new social network. JupyterLab installations.
Oh, this is very one way though. So yeah, that's
true.
We have discourses, right?
It's the foot in the door.
Yeah, but yeah, feel free to link the discourse more if people on Twitter are going like, oh, where should we go complain about Jupyter now? It's like, yeah, come to our discourse.
This is an awesome broadcast network that we have. How's that?
Yeah, that will definitely be great for reaching out to people. So thanks a lot for all those feedbacks, and then I start opening issue or notes or whatever for the executive console and for the security team, and I will address the technical part of wrapping in an iframe the notification.
Maybe the iframe wrapping just needs to be done if they're not plain text. If they're plain text, I think that's probably safe enough. But
it's very hard to detect if something is plain text, right?
Well, but you can take the content and set it as plain text, right?
Oh, you mean if you use text content? Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, for now, actually, it's I'm by default parsing it with the Markdown parser and then displaying it.
Which might be okay. Just we need a higher bar, I think, to make sure that we have a lot of vetting of content. Because this has a potential for being disastrous, right? It's a huge channel to getting things onto people's browsers.
Yeah, so run it by the security thing, but even if we have good controls on the GitHub side, there's a bunch of different things you can do to, get in between something.
And maybe we start small with text.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Having zero trust on the JupyterLab side is definitely, smart.
Okay, then I think I can move to the next question. Optin has implemented the event service for JupyterLab. So that's a new features that's coming with Jupyter Server v2. And so Optin has extended the JupyterLab service for that. And because we are adding the support for Jupyter Server v2 in 3.6, we have backported it. the trouble is, as the code is using async iterable, Afshin had to upgrade the target for the JavaScript from ES 17 to ES 18. And yeah, I was not sure it was okay because somehow it's kind of backward incompatible, because that's mean implicitly that you need a more recent web browser than before. And so yeah, the question is it okay or not?
Well, it's okay to backport to 1x?
to say that the 3.6 packages will be of a different target than 3.5, 3.4, and
Oh, see, this is for the iterators. No,
yeah.
which bit? Yeah, it's partial backport of the iterators, right?
Yeah.
Right. So is 3.6 going to use? Isn't it an API change then for just the async iterators?
Actually, Afshin has introduced it only for the event services. So he has backported.
Oh, I
he
see.
has
Sorry.
extracted from Limino that part to just be able to use it for 3.6. And yeah, so it's
So
it's not
the question
really,
is whether it's okay for the lab
yeah.
targets. Will it affect? Yeah, everything is forward portable, right? So everything, it's not that something that compiled previously will stop compiling. It's just that when browsers run it, they might, if they're too old, they will not work. Is that what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. If they don't support that flavor of JavaScript, then they won't know what to do with the code. Yeah.
How far back do browsers support ES 2018?
I think it was quite good. I did not compare them. I discussed with Afshin. It's not in the link I post. Maybe not.
I think he posted a comment on the linking to the Can I Use website.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so the thing for Can I Use thing is that instead of saying that it supports, does this browser support this target, it says, does it support these features? And then the question is, the output of the lab compile, which features will now longer be backfilled, right? And then you map those onto the Can I Use page. And it's very, I think it would, unless we have that information, we just have to assume that it's all of them, right?
Yeah. So maybe I can dive into a bit more and come back next week with the answer.
I'm tentatively +1 on it. But so our current browsers is a rather harsh set of browsers. It's I think current versions of Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, and maybe Edge.
Yeah, I think we said WebKit, right?
Okay, yeah, but that is rather harsh for corporate, especially corporate, where the LTS versions of these browsers are behind, unless we actually officially support the LTS versions of the browser, which makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if we officially support LTS versions of browsers, but I do know a good number of people regularly test on the LTS because that's what's installed on most of our computers.
Do all the browsers have a well-defined LTS list that we can pull in for unit tests?
I mean, well-defined as in documented, yes. Well-defined as in easy to automatically test. Good
yeah, I
question.
guess also a lot of our tests no longer use actual browsers for running them. Right now, it's all JS DOM kind of things for a lot of the tests.
We have
Not all,
we have the integration test, but Playwright usually brings in like the latest version.
sure, but I mean that most of the unit tests are also just using abstractions or headless things.
Yeah.
So it's not a full set anyway.
So the question was whether it's okay to make such change in a minor release, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In some way, it's kind of similar to, so one change we did like for 3.4, I think, like requiring a new Python version, right, as the lower bound. I think 3.7, dropping 3.6. So I will be tempted to say it's fine with this change as well for 3.6.
It's potentially fine, right? We should just be careful about it and actually, yeah, think it through as we say, because the thing with the Python version is if you drop it and you put that in the metadata, then pip will just no longer considering installing it, so you won't break anybody's install. The problem here is if somebody just updates as part of an automatic pull by pip, and suddenly their browser doesn't gives them funny errors or data loss. That's slightly more important. But yeah, it's
Well, typically, if you don't support browsers, you have a pop-up check that like if it detects an unsupported browser, it warns the user on page load.
but how do you detect it?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but a decade ago when I worked for Amazon, we did that for the Amazon websites. So I know the technology definitely exists, but I haven't touched it in a decade.
Yeah, but I think they have a lot more control over what features are used in their tech stack, right? We have interesting dependencies. Well, we don't recompile them. Yes, it should only be the actual lab thing, but yeah, it's still TypeScript also does a lot of interesting things, right? Is that where if you update the target, it will stop including polyfills. And I don't know if it's a good way to ask TypeScript what polyfills it injected into your build. If you could get that list for the old target and the list for the new target, then we can see, okay, what actual polyfills have we dropped? But I don't think that's easy to get a hold of.
I just glanced through the can I use for all the features it lists for ES 2018. And it looks like the features that might be a concern are the regex features, which I don't think there are polyfills for. And so, so it looks like some of the regex features were started to be supported by Firefox in version 78, released June 29th, 2020. And so I don't think there's polyfills for those. So my guess is there's none of these regexes are in the code base, the current code base. So if we're not using those, then it's not an issue. The other features seem to be supported up through like early 2020 into 2019, et cetera, is when some of these features started being supported by all the browsers. So from that, I think we're probably good.
Yeah, for me, the can I use page is slightly broken. It shows the prototype of finally, our promised finally thing, but it doesn't list any data for it. So I don't know if you're seeing that on your end.
Thanks, Jason, for looking at it.
What's next?
So if there is no additional comments, I can move to the last point. William, thanks for the late comment. I just move it in all the thing to make it, to position it at the same as the announcement thing.
Yeah, I was a little unclear where to put that little comment, just because I missed that part of the discussion. Sorry.
No, don't worry. And then the last point is I have finished a PR open by an external contributor for adding an option for asking close confirmation on the document. The initial issue was to make it opt-in. In the current PR, I make it opt-out. The reason for that is because I think that people tend to not read change log, so it's better to display them the pop-up, and there is a checkbox now on the pop-up that say you don't ask me again, and so they won't see it again. But the question was raised on the PR, should we still keep it as an opt-in? So yeah, I'm just bringing the question so that people can provide their feedback on that. And I have no trouble to change back the settings to be opt-in instead of opt-out. Doesn't change much on the PR. So yeah, feel free to comment on the PR or right now. So I don't know if.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Vida.
sorry, what was the? What are you opting into or opting out of?
So let me share my screen. It will be probably easier. Okay. So there is no this pop-up that's showing if you want to close a document, and is shown by default. And you can avoid like hide it by checking the box like do not ask this thing again. The initial issue was to have it opt-in. That means that by default you don't see the dialog at all, except if you go to the settings and activate the feature.
So we currently see the dialogue, right?
Yeah, if we merge the PR or if you test the PR, you would see by default the dialog.
But if I'm in like 3.2, whatever, and I have a file with changes and I try to close it, there's a dialogue, right?
Only if there is changes.
Yes.
Here it's gonna ask every time. It's
even
really,
if there's no changes?
Yeah, it's really like the ask is to ask for confirmation of closing the file.
That seems very aggressive.
Yeah, if there's no data loss, that seems like a lot.
I think it's probably for people that have big notebooks that takes time to open. I guess it's the reason.
Yeah, or they have like this automatic kernel shutdown when you close the document, so they will lose their state if they close larger notebooks. I think that sounds like an opt-in feature, because it will be very annoying for everybody else. Even if you have this checkbox, a lot of people spin up like cloud things where you don't have persistent settings, right? So everything that you add where you have to do something the first time you launch JupyterLab, a lot of people will have to go jump through those hoops a lot during a week. So every little pop-up, every little dialogue that you expose to the user to, even if it's the first time, there is a cost to it. So I think we should be careful with them.
Yeah, I have no trouble to change it to be opt-in. Just to note on that front that this is gonna happen a lot more than in the past. For example, for notification, by default, we want to display them. And I'm pretty convinced that for newcomers, it's better to have opt-out than opt-in. because diving into the settings is tough, because you first need to know about them, and you need to like find the one that's makes sense for you. So yeah, but I know I understand the trouble for more experienced user.
Yeah, just I think what you were trying to say, right, Vidar, was on ephemeral environments like on Binder, for example, right? You would just want to share something to someone, and in that case, they probably don't need to get these pop-ups, right? Even the one trying to ask them to update to their latest lab, because they are not going to do it. The environment is going to be destroyed once they leave. So I see the point of not putting these pop-ups unless they are really necessary.
But yeah, that's a generic trouble, and I don't know how to do it like more generically. I am perfectly fine. I will change it as Optin for that one. No trouble. It's also because I think there is a related discussion to get for JupyterLab itself, because basically notification is bringing that too, and I think in the future we're gonna have even more of that kind of thing that pop up at the beginning because they are interesting for newcomers, but annoying for others.
Right. So JupyterLab Tour, right?
For example,
But so just for Binder, you can kind of go around it because you can control the settings that the Binder ship with, and if you have the Binder image include some saying defaults there that might not be the defaults for everyone, that can ameliorate the problem slightly. The other thing I was thinking of that previously, right, we wanted to do the settings in local store in the browser, but we went away to actually storing it on the server, right? Because you can have different versions of settings. You can have the double conflict if you go back and forth, and you can do all these things. But part of me considering is whether some of these settings could be, persisted to local store in the browser instead, so that they're shared across all JupyterLab instances. Maybe server specific or URL specific or something like this, but because then even if the server goes away and you have something like Binder, then if you store it to local store, it still persists in the browser. But there are still technical challenges around it, but it might be worth giving some extra thought to whether there's some way to use local store to avoid some of these pain points.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, I commented on the chat about the Binder use case. Like, sure, it's like of course you can configure it, you can configure a lot of stuff, but still, right, it adds quite a bit of work to the ones who want to configure their repo, right? They need to know how to configure Binder, so that's not very obvious for the first time, and then they probably want to know to do that for many repos if they have many. So yeah, so then you can shift this to the deployers, right, of your JupyterLab in that case. Shift the burden of handling this pop-up.
For Binder, does it make sense at some points to provide an override of the default of JupyterLab in the default image?
I guess that could be a good solution, yeah. In the deployment, the default deployment.
Sorry, William, I saw you raise your hand.
I was just wondering if it doesn't pop up, and this is when you close a file that you haven't saved yet, is the other option that it just auto saves when you try to close it? Or I'm just curious what the whole picture is. Because people have expectations about web apps that are different than desktop apps, typically.
So the current behavior is if your document is not saved, the pop-up is not the one shown in that PR. It's another one that say, do you want to close it? Do you want to save? Do you want to discard the change, or do you want to stop the action?
Right.
And this one is the request from some users that want to have a pop-up anytime, even if the document is not dirty.
Oh, wow, I see. Because they
Yeah.
might have a computation running and they don't want to lose it or something like that.
I
guess.
just know, I know personally, if that feature was on by default, I would turn it off immediately and hopefully never have to see that feature again, right? But that's just me, right? So it's take that with a grain of salt. But there will be. This might be one of those subjective fights where people fight
feel
over
like-
defaults.
It seems like if it's when you view JupyterLab as a desktop app, that would be very sensible behavior. But when you view it as a web app, it's the wrong behavior to have all these pop-ups because you just expect things to be automatically saved in the cloud.
Oh yeah, but if VS Code starting asking me, do you want to close this file, and it was saved, and I have 10 tabs I want to close, and it asks
So
me for every
annoying.
time, I'm going to,
Yeah.
throw the machine out the window, right? So it's a
Yeah, VS Code's really good that way in terms of saving your data to disk. It's very aggressive.
sure, but this was even for files that are saved, right? So
Yeah.
that still applies.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's pretty crazy.
Yes, it makes sense for notebooks, right? If sometimes if you configure your settings, if you close the tab, it will close to shut down the kernel.
Right. Yeah.
So that it might make completely sense for some users, but I'm saying this should be opt-in, but that's at least subjectively from my end. But yeah, going back to that's why I also want some sort of global store, not even local store in my browser to say whether I should have auto closing brackets or not, right? For JupyterLab. Because I don't want to have to put this setting everywhere. I get a new JupyterLab instance and change that setting every time I visit a binder or visit somewhere else that has a JupyterLab instance. I want it to be the same everywhere, right?
I mean, whoever did this probably was really lost some work and was really annoyed or something like that, I guess.
I'm inclined to agree with Vidar, and I'm no UX expert, but if a small group of users have asked for this and they like fully understand what they're asking for and have found themselves in situations where they want this, it sounds like maybe this is something where it should be opt-in, because if this is a thing a user needs, they already understand that this is a need of theirs. And the like pop-up by default seems like it should be more for something that users are going to run into problems that they can't solve on their own, or that they can't understand on their own, maybe.
For what it's worth, I made it so that if you close your whole browser tab for CodeCalc, it pops up a notification. And I had that on by default, and I got a large number of complaints and people were angry. So then I switched it to be disabled by default by something you could enable, and people were much happier with that. So that's my personal experience with a similar but not the same kind of thing.
Yeah, so the pattern where you have a lot of dialogues initially, and then you use these "don't ask me again" things, is typically a very good way to iteratively have users fill in settings as they go. But it's that works very well for desktop apps. But for things where you have throwaway instances like web apps where you can never reuse the settings, it's just the logic changes. But yeah, the "don't ask me again" things is otherwise very, very powerful.
Just a word of warning on the "don't ask again." A lot of people will refrain from checking that box because they don't know how to undo it later. So anybody who's not familiar with how to get into settings and customize those might never check that box and just thrash against their environment for forever because they don't want to do something that they don't know how to undo. Speaking as somebody who's done exactly that in some apps before. Just throwing that out there as a potential UX oddity.
Yeah, some apps don't even allow you to undo those. So yeah.
So thanks a lot for the discussion and all the comment. And maybe there are 10 minutes left. We may stop the recording if people want to bring additional points out of that.
Was it